Hello.
Do you want me to say hello? Or?
I said hello. Joe, I can hear you.
I can hear you too. We're good.
Okay. Can they hear us?
Carmen texted me and said that we're muted and that we'll start hearing them as soon as 5:30 hits, which is 1 minute from now.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Good evening. Nope, there are no changes to the agenda.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I'll motion approved.
So moved.
I'll second that, but I would like to move on the consent agenda to pull item number C, the concrete pavement improvements. I don't have any specific questions about it, but it was a complex item, and I'd just like Tony to walk through it, explain it to my level of knowledge.
Sure. Okay. Procedurally, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. We can approve the agenda as it's presented, and then when we get to the consent agenda, then we can just have a discussion on that particular one. Okay.
Yeah,
perfect.
that'd be just fine.
Awesome. Okay.
Rather
Great.
than pulling it out, that'd be
Yeah.
fine.
Cool. Okay. That's all right.
If that's all right with Jared. I mean, otherwise we can
Yeah.
pull it down to the regular if we want to have a full discussion on it. Either
However
one.
we do it.
Okay.
So
Well, if you're good with that, we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Do we have a second? to
Second.
approve the-
I second it,
Yeah,
but
perfect.
do I need to amend my second?
no, you're fine. I
Okay.
think we can have Tony talk about it quickly during the consent.
Okay.
agenda.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Okay, now on to the consent agenda. So now this would probably be a good time, Jerry, if you or Commissioner Rosted, if you'd like to ask some questions.
Yeah,
Aye.
so in the consent agenda, I think there was like 8 pages of concrete bids, and I was trying to understand how we got to where we ended up.
Oh, okay. So we actually have 12 projects on the bid tab. How we got, so if I understand your question correctly, how we prioritize those projects and why we're doing what we're doing in 2025. Well, I explained that to Dave like yesterday. So we set a budget number of $1.5 million. And if you remember correctly, the last 2 years, and possibly the third year, I think we're only year 2, but we formalized our process with the city of Fargo. We have partnership agreements to pay for projects. That also comes out of that $1.5 million amount. So we have to account for 2 projects in 2025 that the city handles the bidding and the construction. We just partner, and essentially we pay 10% of the project cost. The city of Fargo pays 10% of the project cost, and the rest of the funds are from transportation alternative fund grants through DOT. So it's a good partnership. We get more bang for our buck. But the rest of the projects are prioritized in various ways. One, we did a pavement assessment in late 2023. We had an independent contractor through iWorks, which is our work order management system that we use in operations. They came and did an independent assessment. So we used those results. They ranked our projects for us, but they, as you can see from our projects, they are various sizes. So it's like putting a puzzle together. We can't just take our top 10 projects, but because we know our budget can't do all that in 1 year. So we try to fit smaller ones with medium-sized projects and larger ones. And a lot of it is just our knowledge of what the condition of the parks and trails and the parking lots are. So essentially it's like putting a puzzle together to meet the budget. And this year we were successful, and we can do all 12 projects in addition to alternates that we had on the last page.
So is it fair enough to just, as I go through the list, I see some get highlighted, but they weren't highlighted by the winning bid. So
I think I know what you're saying. So MBN put the bid tab together for us. They're our consultant on the project. So the last page is the number that is important. I know there's a few highlights. I actually think that's an error on their part. There's a few highlights, but the last page where it's highlighted with our awarded contractor, if it's approved by the board, Earthwork Services, I believe is 1.329 million.
Yep.
If I remember correctly. That is the number that we recommend we move forward with. Without having that bid tab in front of me,
So which projects then did we fund?
so all 12 and the
Oh,
three
all-
yes. So Earthwork Services, all encompassing was the low bid.
Oh, so
So we're not awarding to multiple contractors for this project. It'll be just Earthwork Services for that dollar amount.
So Davies High School, Milwaukee Trail, Courts Plus, all of these
Yes.
totaled the 1 point.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I thought I was with the highlighted tabs and stuff. I was thinking that, oh, some of these didn't make it. And so that's why I got confused. Okay.
No, all projects made it that we are proposing, as long as it's approved by the board.
Could have cut to the chase on that.
Yes, but
Okay.
I don't have that in front of me without.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes complete sense now. Thank
Okay.
you. Yep.
Any other questions on the specific projects or the alternates we're proposing?
I move to approve the consent agenda now that I understand it. Susan could have explained
I'll
that to
second.
me on the phone yesterday when I called.
I just wanted Tony to get in front of you and
Yeah, and
answer
take his hat off.
specifics.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is Commissioner Dawson on? Is she online? Is she able to? Hey, Commissioner Vicky, can you speak? Are you able to speak? That sounds bad. Can you speak? Maybe not. Commissioner Dawson? All right. Well, I have some notes from Commissioner Dawson. She wanted to make sure to thank the staff for their efforts on getting bids out early. She said we're seeing a number of bids come in quite favorably this year. We're also seeing some projects with completion dates early in the season. This is good for the Park District. So once again, thank you to the staff. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
Can you hear me, Aaron?
Any further discussion? Jeff, please poll the board.
Start with those present. Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Abzey,
Yes.
I'll go to Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye. Aye.
all right, Commissioner Dawson, are you there? All right,
Oh,
okay, Commissioner Dawson, yes,
Okay.
all right, Commissioner Hill,
we have written comment. Aye. Motion carries. All right, on to recognition of audience public comments. Do we have anybody in the audience who wishes to speak to the board this evening? Anybody in the audience who wishes to speak? Seeing none, hearing none. We'll move on to item number 2, Director's Report. Susan.
Good evening, Commissioners. I have just a couple updates for you tonight. The first is this coming weekend, we have the ice review. The theme is a musical ice extravaganza. It'll be held at Cornerstone Bank Arena March 14th and 15th. The event is from 7 to 9. And then on March 16th, it's from 1 to 2 p.m. We have 112 skaters that are registered to perform this year. So it's always a fun and exciting event here in the community. The second update is coming up at the end of the month, we have the Butterfly Ball. There's 2 nights. It will be Friday and Saturday, March 28th and 29th from 6:30 to 9. And that event is held at the Avalon Event Center. And those are the only updates that I have, unless there are any questions.
Any questions? All right, hearing none, seeing none. We will move on to the 2025 adjusted aquatic fees. Looks like we have Kevin Bowe and Susan Foss presenting.
We're going to tag team this one
Perfect.
tonight. I just wanted to have the opportunity just to provide a little bit of the background as to where we came to the 2025 fees. And then Kevin is going to go through the adjusted fees tonight that you will be looking to approve. So just some background information, really with our fees. Those are brought to the board typically at our May Facilities Committee meeting. And that's what happened last year with the proposed 25 fees. And then at the June Park Board meeting, all of the fees for the entire park district were approved as part of that consent agenda. And as staff continued to work to try to balance the budget, the executive team really encouraged and challenged some of our staff to really look into the budgets, right? And look into fees and then also look on the expenditure side to see, where potentially we had some opportunity to increase fees and then also areas to potentially reduce some of the expenditures. And we came back, our recreation team looked at our pool fees, and we really hadn't seen a significant increase over the last 5 years. I think in total, there was a $28 increase. So that was one area where, as staff, we felt like there was some capacity to increase fees. So that is what happened. We made that recommendation. We brought it back to the board for approval at the August Park Board meeting, August of 2024. Just a little bit of kind of philosophy, and really for the park district, there are two areas, right, where we bring in revenue. One is the charges for services, and those are all of the different areas where we have fees, where users pay those fees, and then the other really is through property taxes. And philosophically, I think we're having conversations as we really assess the entire park district and looking at how we're doing things. And I think the thought there is that the individuals and people who are using those facilities would maybe pay a little bit more, right, to offset that total impact to the entire community. There are people in the community that don't necessarily use pools. There are people in the community that don't necessarily use golf courses, as an example. So that is where we're looking, and that is where that recommendation came, right, is again, going back to looking at people who are using the facilities and having them pay just a little bit more. I think what we realized and what we heard very clearly from the community is that we went too high. Because we hadn't increased fees at the pool for so many years, we were trying to catch up. And we were a little bit too aggressive. So, in this process, I think we heard from the entire community. And, for us in setting those fees, that was encouraging because we weren't just hearing from pool users. We were really hearing from people in the community that don't use pools. And, for us, that's a pretty strong statement that the community supports access. And, for the park district, we want to have access and we don't want to create any barriers for people to enjoy the amenities that we have. And it's a balancing act. But, we listened to the feedback. We heard, I think, the importance of those fees and also offering additional options. So when Kevin kind of jumps into the presentation, I think you'll see that the fees, we're recommending that the fees are adjusted as well as some more flexible options.
Thank you, Susan. So as she said, we really took the information from the community to relook at those fees. We also looked at the amenities at each pool, and looked at, what they offer, the side box of water that's there, the amenities that each pool had. We also looked at the operation costs of those pools. So as we looked at these fees, we are looking at reducing, or what's being proposed is a reduction of fees for all youth, adult, and family season passes at Roger G. Gress Pool, Southwest, Davies, as well as Island Park Aquatic Facilities. We're also reducing the price of the all-inclusive 5-for-1 season pass, as well as introducing the new 4-for-1 season pass, providing all access to the pools with the exception of the Island Park Aquatic Facilities. As far as the fees go, what was approved at the August meeting. We're not going to change those fees, those daily admission fees. It's really reasonable as far as what was presented at that time. The other fees that were looked at, obviously with Madison Pool, we're not going to change those fees from 2024 recommended to keep those fees as presented at the August meeting. And then from there, we looked at the amenities at Roger G. Gress and Southwest and Davies. Obviously, those go in order as far as boxes of water and amenities that were provided. So as we looked at the Roger G. Gress facility, we would go from what was proposed back in August, $90 down to $75. And from there, we just increased those fees at each pool, $5 for the youth and the adult, and the family went up $15. Or I'm sorry, $10. So with that, I can try to answer any questions you have. Dave's also here with the history of the pool that was presented before.
Thanks, Kevin. And I think scholarships, again, we have scholarships available. How do people find out more about scholarships and where the more info on scholarships?
So, great question. They can go to our website and get that information. Our administrative staff is handling all those requests coming in for scholarships. Commissioner Absey reached out to her to get some information from the schools, be able to reach out to those areas to get that scholarship in the school's hands, to be able to reach more of a broader group of people that would be get that scholarship program.
And I was going to say, can you kind of maybe explain a little bit more about qualifications for who qualifies for scholarships?
Sure.
And then is there a cap? Like, is there is there a certain number of scholarships that we give out?
No, this is all being funded through the foundation. The dollar amounts. So a family would get 2 programs per season, so 2 brochures. So they get two of those. 90% of those are pool passes that we provide. They qualify through the school lunch program and the SNAP program. So we take that information from them, and then we reach out and do our due diligence to find out, make sure they qualify for that program.
I don't have a question so much as a comment. I guess I'd like to just express my appreciation to the community for reaching out and saying, this is too much, it's gone too far. The process worked. They provided feedback, we listened, we sat back, we listened, we went back, we adjusted our rates, and here we are today. I hope we have a better priced product for the future going forward, and that's the way it's supposed to work. You know, we're here to listen to the community. We're here as servants of the public, and I hope we did our job correctly this time.
I would agree with Jerry. And I just have one question. Because Island Park's new, do we ever ask for feedback at the end of a season?
We will. We will
Okay.
get some feedback from that specific that facility. You know, as people check in, we'll be able to monitor the numbers that come through that facility, actually all pools, but we will be asking for a lot of feedback, you know, what worked, what didn't work, hours of operation, the whole 9 yards, yes.
Great. Yeah, I'm excited and looking forward to hearing those numbers at the end of the season and feedback, because I think that continues the conversation of making sure we're listening to the community.
And if I could, I would just want to follow up with Kevin's response as far as how we're engaging with the community. You know, that's one of the initiatives that we are currently working on from our strategic plan, and it's community engagement and how we're engaging with the community. And you know, a lot of those conversations are based on the front end, you know, before we do projects and trails and events and programs. But I think the other piece of that is exactly, Commissioner Absey, what you suggested is that follow-up, right? At the end of a season, at the end of a program, getting feedback on what went well, what didn't, you know, what people would like to see. So that is definitely going to be a priority and a focus for us continuing as we move forward.
Yeah, we do send out surveys to our existing programs, but I think we can expand that as Susan said.
I think I would like to echo Commissioner Rosted's statements and also sort of express some gratitude to our staff as well. And I think we've we've sort of communicated that the intention of pools is not to be profitable. This is not a private endeavor, not a private business. We know it will run at a sort of a subsidized loss, but I appreciate that our staff is looking at rates, at user fees, and trying to sort of be more intentional. And so I appreciate that, and it's nice to have the structure. And I think, with the new structure, sort of hopefully people can find what they need or they're looking for, and at the end of it, the daily rates or your daily single use admission has not changed. So you can still go with your daily admission. You don't have to buy a family pass to access the pools. And you think about, we have, the Fargo Park District carries the majority of the outdoor aquatic facilities in the metro, and so I think those are some good points. But again, thanks to the staff, and as Commissioner Rosted said, we listened, and we're hopefully making a change here. With that said, if there's no additional comments, do we have a motion to approve the updated aquatic fees as presented?
I'll make the motion to approve the adjusted 2025 aquatic fees as presented.
And I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Jeff, please pull the board.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Absey,
Yes.
Commissioner Deutsch, Commissioner Dawson, Commissioner Hill.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
On to item 4. Thanks, Kevin. On to item 4, consideration of the Madeline's Meadows Developers Agreement. Mr. Dave Beats.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioners, in your packet, and actually the next 3 agenda items are all related to Madeline's Meadows. So I'll be presenting the first item, which is the developers agreement. The second item, again, all in relation, Brock will come up and present, and that talks about creating an assessment district and all of the bonding and financial information that goes along with that. And then I'll come back and do the third portion of that. So item number 6, and assuming we progressively approve these, then come back to you and ask for permission to bid the park project as is required by our procurement policy. So the first one here is the development or the developers agreement. The typical developers agreement basically starts with the developer in any given area asking for a park improvement. So we had that happen at Madeline's Meadows with Eagle Ridge Development. In this area within the development agreement, one of the main things that's discussed is the size of the park. What's another thing would be the location of it in where it's at in the city, as well as a basis for the design of the park. So Madeline's Meadows is a 70-acre development in South Fargo. Its address is right just north of 74th Avenue South and in between 29th and 30th Street South. So those of us that are parkies in the group, it's just south of Golden Valley and just west of Eagle Valley, for reference. And if you don't know where that is, then the address is there, or at least an estimated address.
Did you just say parkies?
Parkies, yeah.
Parkies, okay.
That's what I call us
Just
that are
okay.
in the park and
Just
rec
wanted to
field.
clarify
So
that.
yeah.
All right, thanks.
Anyway, the park is estimated to be at 2.17 acres. You might ask, how is that determined? When we start to meet with a developer, it's really a negotiation. There's nothing right now that requires developers to work with us outside of, we have a very good relationship with city planning. So when city planning gets developers to come to the table, they point them our direction. Excuse me. And so really what ensues is we look at all of the acreage of their development and we try to get either anywhere from 8 to 10% of land dedication outside of what they've already dedicated to right away for streets and sewer and things of that nature, water retention. So with this one, we came to a negotiation of 2.17 acres. Another thing in the developer's agreement is the conveyance of the property. I will say this one got a little bit out of order because previous leadership accepted the deed to this property prior to the developer's agreement that you're considering tonight. So just, I wanted to make that point of clarification. Typically, the conveyance of the property happens within the developer's agreement itself. Another thing that happens is the name of the park. We work with the developer on that. The name that's been requested for this one is Madeline's Meadows Park, because it's Madeline Meadows Development. So that is a request here. Another important aspect is the future designation of specials to the park district. So we negotiate that too. Typically, we try to keep it no more than 2 city lots for any future specials that come our way. With this one, we've negotiated to a 60-foot road frontage for calculating that special assessment in the future, and that would not exceed 7,500 square feet total. So that's pretty important to the park district. That protects us. We're still paying our share. If the city comes through and does a road project, we still have to pay some of that. But due to the nature of parks, we try to negotiate that so it's still a benefit for us in exchange for ongoing maintenance into the future. That's where the park district is really bringing forth its effort and its perpetual maintenance once these places get developed. Also in there is, in the packet, is in the developer's agreement, excuse me, is an estimated boundary for the special assessment. Really, that's just the boundary that shows the benefiting area. And so we want to make sure that's part of the agreement. And then also a basic site design, as well as a cost estimate of the project. And Brock can talk more about the assessment portion when he gets up here. I think that's everything. Oh, and then the amenities. It's spelled out what the park district is offering to the project and what the developer and or city is offering to the project. So before you have the developer's agreement with all of the things I touched on. So I'll try my best to answer any questions you might have.
None here. Do we need a motion, Dave?
We would need a motion on this, yep, because the next 2 items are contingent upon this gaining approval from the board.
Yeah, because we would need to, we have the developer agreement in our packet, so we're approving that. And it looks like the developer's already signed it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And typically, this one is relatively new for many of us. Some of us have been on the portion where once this has all been done, we've then carried out the building and construction of the parks. But really with Brock and his team and Tyler Kirshner, Tony's group, we're all involved in really creating and figuring out what this park is going to be. So typically, like in the future, you'll see a developer's agreement come at least a few months, I would guess, ahead of when we'd be looking to do all the resolution that Brock is going to present to us. But again, due to the nature of this one, it got a little bit out of order. And so that's why we're just kind of collecting the pieces, I guess, and trying to move it ahead.
Yeah. Are you able to share kind of what do you think, kind of, how did this happen? How did it, come to be, or
yeah, really, we got contacted in, I want to say April of 2024 by the developer saying, hey, let's do this park. We want to make the improvement here. In that initial meeting, it was then learned that the park district had already accepted the deed to the property. Typically that comes along, like I mentioned, in the developer's agreement. So in the future, the developer's agreement would come first. Within the developer's agreement would be the conveyance or the deeding of the property. And then we would go through all of the resolutions and things that Brock's talking about. But the nature of this one is and our goal would be to have park areas in before the development gets established. And so that's a difference with this one too, is the neighborhood's already mostly established. There's a few lots that are still left to be built on, but it's populated. And so we're coming a little bit late to the game, but just due to the nature of how that worked.
Okay, so we have some kind of procedures going forward of
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yep.
Are these procedures written down?
They are internally. It's
Okay.
internal documents, but yeah, we've researched how this has been done in the past. We've consulted with legal counsel. We've really refined our process. We've had really great meetings with the assessor's office. And the city of Fargo has just been a great help showing us, because they actually administer, if approved, a special assessment for us. And so just really good collaboration of how this has been done many, many times for the Park District, but there's many of us that are new to the process.
Yeah, and if I understand correctly, there was some change in personnel in a couple of places, which kind of fell through the cracks, I think is probably the best way to explain it.
I think that's very accurate, Commissioner Rosted, yes.
I'll make the motion to approve the Madeline Meadows Developers Agreement between the developer and the Fargo Park District as presented.
I'll second.
You have to do a lot of work tonight.
I'm just going to second everything.
Okay, we have a motion in a second. I'll read, Commissioner Dawson has some comments. I'll try to just summarize it, just basically saying thank you to the staff for recognizing and handling the agreements. It's work to get this corrected, but beneficial for the neighborhood and important that our neighborhoods have parks and playgrounds, to summarize Commissioner Dawson's comments. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Jeff, please poll the board.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Abzey,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson, Commissioner Deutsch, Commissioner Hill.
Aye, motion carries. On to number 5, consideration of resolution creating park improvement district number 2025-1 for Madeline's Meadows. Brock Leeds.
All right, thank you, Mr. President, members of the commission. So the second part of this process, there's a number of resolutions that typically need to be approved, and these really are spelled out in statute as you're going to go about this. So we work with our legal counsel and make sure that all these resolutions get drafted appropriately. And again, as I said, there's really a detailed spelled out process in statute that governs that for us. So what you'll have in front of you tonight is various resolutions that allow us to create the improvement district, as well as getting an engineer's report, approving that report, directing plans and specifications to get done, resolution of approving those plans, and then a resolution directing us to go out for bid, as well as an official declaration of intent, which really says, what are we intending to do in that area and creating this district? So all of these in the future, as we do additional development districts like this, these resolutions will be part of that process. And we'll bring those to you as we need to. I know some of the questions that come up, we did see the estimate that for this park, $743,000. I'm rounding all of these numbers. As I look, we did get a list from the city of what the estimates of per lot, what that looks like. If I'm looking at their spreadsheet appropriately, it appears that there's roughly 235 lots in that area. That also includes 2 large commercial lots, as well as that which we own. So, they're not all residential lots, but there's 2 parcels that are carved out commercial. And then, as Dave had indicated, the piece that the Park District owns. For the residential lots, it's all based on square footage. So it's a math problem working backwards into that $743,000. On the low end, the estimate of total cost to a residential lot would be $1,900. And that is spread out typically with specials over 25 years. So the city administers those. They spread those out over 25 years at whatever the interest rate is at the time for those specials. On the high end for residential lots, larger lots would be $3,900. And again, spread out over 25 years. So the average for a residential lot is about $3,150. If you do the math on that, I ran an amortization schedule. You'd be looking at about $210 a year, or roughly $1,750 a month if you're on the average. On those smaller lots, on the low end of $1,900, the estimate would be about $126 a year, or roughly $10.50 a month. And on the higher end, it would be $260 a year, $21.75 a month. And again, I want to be clear, these are all estimates, because until we get the official bid and find out exactly where we're at, this could fluctuate a little bit. But you all may be familiar at times if there's been improvements in your area, or if your neighbor wants to do something, you get a letter that says, hey, so there's going to be an improvement in your area. You have the right to look at this. It's because the potential impact to your property. And so those are the costs associated for the lots that are in those areas. Procedurally, what will happen is the city will issue a letter to every property owner notifying them of this development going in, notifying them what the estimate is for their particular piece of property. Those individuals then will have a process in which they can protest that if they choose to do so. And that protest happens through the city and would need to, as I understand it, be a simple majority of the total square footage. So it's not by number, it's the total square footage. And so as we do these in the future, a lot of times we're working with the developer in this regard. So it's the developer and us having this conversation rather than all these property owners. But logistically, that is the process, and we will certainly honor that process and go through that. And the city will help us to make sure they notify all of those property owners. So that is the kind of financial impact of that. As Dave mentioned, we typically do lease revenue bonds for this because as you create a district, you need to have something that you're collecting the money for, and that's the bond that you use to create the improvement. And that's how improvement districts typically work. And so we will be working with our financial advisor in that regard if all of these things go through accordingly. So procedurally, approval from the board, the process for notifying the property owners, their timeline to protest, then final decision and bid, and then going out and issuing the actual lease revenue bond, provided all those things happen as they're supposed to. Before we get to the motion, with that, I would stand for any questions that you might have, and then I will explain the logistics of the motion because there's several of them, but I talked to our clerk and we can handle that in one motion to make it easier for everybody.
So if this were to have been done the way normally we would do it, does that developer then just pass that cost on to the price of the lot to the homeowner essentially? So
yeah,
that's how that would normally.
Yep, Commissioner Hill, as I understand it, that's exactly right. So we negotiate with the developer. We get basically the two lots, and then we look at the cost of this. That developer then parcels that out to each of those parcels as they sell them. So the impact is probably very similar to what I just explained. It's just happening before those lots are sold or as they're being sold. It's done that way, which is typically, I understand, how those assessment districts have been handled.
So just to be clear, I think you said that during the protest period, if someone is not in favor of this, they can throw their hand there and say, I am not in favor of it. And it'll essentially be a vote based on their square footage.
Yeah, that's the way I understand it from the city, is that it's 50% of the total square footage that would have to protest. And so, yes, it's not necessarily one property, one vote. It's based on total square footage of protest, and that would all be official protest through the process the city has spelled out.
So for the record, then it's completely up to the property owners collectively.
That is correct.
Yeah, so if more than 50% of them protest, then this goes away and no park.
Yeah, at that point,
or playground.
Yes, at that point, we would come back and have a conversation about what, if anything, is next. It may look differently from a park perspective, depending on what we would choose to do, because at that point, there would not be an assessment district. There would not be specials that would be coming in and collected by the park district. We would then have to make a decision based on what are we what's our appetite to invest something to put some sort of amenity in that area.
Because we still have our parcel of land in the development.
That is correct.
Well, and I guess, I'm biased. I think a park district or a park ups the value of the community, but I don't want to be in a position where we're saying you have to do this. So the community will have its say in court, so to speak, and that's the way it should be. So I think that's important as well.
Correct. All right, if there aren't any other questions, I think the cleanest way to handle a motion is a little different than what I had put on the memo, so I confirmed with our clerk. I think one motion recommending approval of the declaration of intent and the resolutions as presented would suffice, and then Carmen will fill out all the appropriate paperwork and get signatures, because we have to make sure that we handle each of those resolutions with the motion, the seconder, and who voted. So she will fill all that out, but we can do it in one motion and they'll all be the same if that's okay.
I was ready to rapid fire all of these.
Make it easier for you, Jerry.
So, you want to? Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the declaration of official intent along with the remaining adoption of resolutions as presented in the documents. Huh? Okay.
Would you like to second, Commissioner Hofstad? Okay, so we'll have a motion by Commissioner Rosted, a second by Commissioner Dawson. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Jeff, please pull the board.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Abzi,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch, Commissioner Dawson, Commissioner Hill,
Aye. Motion carries. On to item number 6, consideration of permission to bid Madeline's Meadows Park. Welcome back, Dave Beats.
As promised, here I am again, commissioners. Yeah, before you is our just asking for the board's approval, the permission to go ahead and we've already gotten now the approval to move ahead with plans and specifications through the resolutions. So our goal now would be to bid this out when ready. Our procurement policy requires any project over $200,000. Which this is. If you remember, it's just under 750 total. And again, Brock made a good point. That's an estimated cost. But we need you to give us formal approval according to our procurement policy to bring this project out to bid. I do want to remind you as well that once we do bid the project, you'll see it coming back before you, and then we'll have it all finalized. We'll know exactly what impact is for every single lot. We'll know the exact cost of the construction. And so you'll get an opportunity to see this again.
Any idea what kind of timeline this will take? I mean, can we get in the ground with a playground yet this season, or?
Our goal would be to have, in the developer's agreement, it's outlined that tentatively we'd like to have construction done yet this year. Again, there's a lot of variables at play there. So our goal would be at very least get all the underground and dirt work done this year, and then potentially be seeding and put the amenities in potentially in the fall. It just depends on who the contractor would be and what their schedule is.
Well, I'll do the trifecta. I make a motion to approve publicly bid the Madeline Meadows Park Improvement Project and Madeline Meadows Playground projects as presented.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Jeff, please pull the board.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Abzi,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch, Commissioner Dawson, Commissioner Hill,
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Dave. Item 7, consideration of the 2025 playground replacement projects. Welcome back, Tony Schmidt.
2025 playground improvement projects. So this year we had 3 projects on our list for replacements, Rolt Farm, Fox Run Park, and Thurlton Little League Complex. If you remember, during budget time last year, we made a request to go from $450,000 budget to a $700,000 budget. And that will allow us to replace 3 playgrounds versus the previous 2. We have 80 public playgrounds in our park system, and to get on a replacement cycle other than every 40 years, we needed to increase that amount. So this is great. We received 7 proposals. As you can see in your packet, we had to waive the requirements for those of you that were at the planning committee meeting due to those vendors not meeting bidding requirements. We went through an intensive scoring process of the 4 proposals. For the 3 playground projects, it was myself, Chris Johnson from MBN, and Tyler Kirschner. We spent about 3 hours in a room, and as you can see from the scoring, some of the vendors were competitive, but we landed on selecting Burke as the playground equipment vendor. That's a manufacturer, excuse me. Our vendor is My Turn Play Systems. So all 3 projects will be awarded to My Turn Play Systems in West Fargo. Now, if approved tonight, these projects will go through a public comment period to select different color designs and different design features of the playground. So 2 color choices, and 2 designs and 3 color choices. I keep getting that messed up. So The comment period, if approved tonight, will be March 16th to March 31st. And then we will get to work on notifying our vendor and get these in the ground before the end of this season. So there's some unique features why Burke stood out from the other playground vendors, such as Miracle and Landscape Structures and Little Tykes, which keep scrolling through, please. So this is Rolt Farm Playground. Turf surfacing, we received a grant, if you remember, last fall from the Garrison Diversion Conservancy District for $50,000. That allowed us to go with turf versus the traditional engineered wood fibers at this playground. But one unique feature on this playground, and it'll also be included at Thurlton Little League, is it's a newer concept that Burke incorporated in their playgrounds, and I actually saw it at the national conference, and I said we need to have one of those, and luckily hopefully we will. It's called the 360 loop slide. So if you see that, it allows children of all abilities to go up the inclusive ramp, and it's similar to the one that is in the indoor playground here at the sports center. So if you're a wheelchair bound child, you can, and have upper body strength, you can either crawl or climb up backwards up that inclusive climber and then come down the slide. So that is a unique feature that no other company offers right now. So it's called the 360 loop. So we thought that'd be a great addition to Rolt Farm, with all the different types of events we have there. You can keep scrolling through. This one is Thurlton Little League. It doesn't show the slide on this one, but it just gives you an idea. But we have 3 short videos that we'd like to show you that highlight the inclusive play equipment. There's that photo it's shown in this playground. They're a couple minutes long, and it explains the 360 loop and how a child uses it. And then there's a spinner and then an inclusive tunnel where it offers up to 20 different play features. It looks like it's just a crawl tube, but it's not once we read into it. So they provided these videos to us, and we watched them while we did the ranking process. And it's all about presentation. They designed to our budget, and this is what set them apart. So So, like I stated previously, this is what set Burke apart from the other playground manufacturers and scored higher. Other companies are a little behind, but Landscape Structures is becoming more innovative. So next year, I think they'll have some similar features that we can consider because, parks are for everyone, playgrounds are for everyone. Everyone deserves a great park. So we look at that when we're, trying to improve our playgrounds. So, any other questions about our proposal on the three
Tony,
playground
could you
replacement?
maybe talk a little bit more about the bidding process and how some of these vendors are, we sort of give them our specifications and how that's changed?
Yeah, so we come up with a budget, and just from previous knowledge and projects, we kind of know what we're going to get, and it also our budget amount and what type of play features we can have is also the footprint that we can put it in within a park. We only have so much space, so we determined that internally. Like we came up with the $700,000 amount, but we put the proposal together in the RFP that we had $300,000 for Rolt Farm and $200,000 for the other two. And some of the other requirements are, it must include a swing set, and it has to have 2 belt swings, 1 tot swing, 1 inclusive swing. We put other parameters in there, must include, ground play features, so everyone has a chance to play. Different inclusive, must include 1 inclusive play component. We don't designate color, obviously. Just things of that nature, and basically, it's the square footage of the area and how tall a manufacturer can go. So it's the footprint of the park is what I'm trying to look. Our border. That way they can design. Playgrounds are getting quite tall these days, compared to how they were even 5-10 years ago. Projects at Woodhaven South and Village West Park that we did in 2023, they're tall. So you can take a smaller area and build taller. They're getting very creative with the space they're allowed. So those 2 parks, and then we did Trollwood. That was just a traditional 2 to 5 year old playground in 2024, and then Pepsi Soccer. We had a small space. It was just due to, we have a building there, we have a parking lot there, we had a main line irrigation water line there. We're kind of stuck sometimes. So it's nice that they can build these taller to offer a great playground, if that answers your question. So there's not a lot of parameters. It's just we take our previous history and what we can do in the area of the park, the specific area where the playground goes, where we don't have to knock down existing trees and things of that nature. We do have to take down one, unfortunately, at Rolt Farm, because 10 years ago or 25 years ago, trees were planted quite close to that playground, but we made it work. We saved all the other trees.
How will community input look? Is it online? I know at the planning committee. Oh,
I know, but you're always here.
Commissioners will be using the social pinpoint site connect.fargoparks.com, and we will be having a survey opened up on the 16th that will have pictures of both options of design, and then depending upon what the individual picks, it will open up the 3 color choices. And then there's an additional opportunity for them to say what they liked about that particular playground. And it is something that they can view all 3 sites and vote on all 3, or if they choose that they only want to do Fox Run or they only want to do Low Farm, they can also just vote on those.
are we we're advertising to all of Fargo, or are we really trying to hit the neighborhoods that are around the parks?
Right now, we would be opening up to everyone because, again, you might come from North Fargo to Roll Farm for an event, or you might be going to the baseball game. And so we want to be able to open it up to a larger audience.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be the first time we've used this, correct?
Yes, for this particular, connect.fargoparks.com right now does have our Park System Master Plan surveys on it, and we'll be using that for this. And then an upcoming survey will be coming out in April as well for the Urbanus Park. So again, we're looking at using it monthly, getting more engagement, and allowing folks to give us their opinions on what they like and what they would like to see improved. And you can go to it now, and if you have questions on things that or suggestions all across the park system, we're listening.
Okay. Just a comment. This fantastic technology. It's certainly not like the parks I grew up in back in the 1900s.
All right. Any further questions or comments? All right. So then we are, oh, yes, go ahead. There we go. Commissioner Dawson has moved to approve the playground projects as presented. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Jeff, please pull the board.
Commissioner Osted,
Yes.
Commissioner Absey,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch, Commissioner Dawson, Commissioner Hill.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. Item 8, the governance committee update. So we did have to kind of change the agenda numbers around. So we started with a legislative update. Brock joined us and gave us an update on the bills that we and the NDRPA are tracking. And I think we're on the other side of crossover now. And Commissioner Osted might know better. When does the legislative session end? In May?
Yeah, I was just out there yesterday and today, and a couple of legislators I talked to think they're going to try and save about 5 days. They have 80 total, so they're cruising along. They were 2 years ago. They were at 1.3 billion over budget at crossover. This year they were at like 500 million over. But they're typically over budget, so that's not unusual. But they're at like 500 million over budget, so they were feeling pretty good about it. So they're in the cutting mode, but yeah, I think that they're feeling pretty good about things, and so they're moving along. So I think they'll be done with at least a week to spare, maybe before the end of April.
Great, thank you. And I believe we should all the commissioners should receive the email from NDRPA that's sort of updates and tracking and sort of providing information for all of us. Then we reviewed the new board member orientation. So we just looked at the first draft. I think there were some comments. I know I did just send an updated draft this afternoon to the commissioners. So I'm asking the commissioners to please review those and send any proposed changes by Monday, the 24th. And then ideally we will review and discuss that again at the next governance meeting on Wednesday, the 26th. So thank you to Commissioner Absey for sort of helping draft the first go round. Then we reviewed and discussed the park board gold card benefits. So we are still continuing those discussions. We will have that on the agenda for the next governance meeting, and including possibly a name change, removing the gold card sort of name and possibly just calling it park board or commissioner benefits, something like that. Item 4, we discussed, reviewed and discussed governance policy, or GP8, which is the commissioners addressing board member violations. So all commissioners reported back in compliance with no recommended changes. And I believe we should see that on the consent agenda at the next board meeting if the procedure is correct. Item 5, we reviewed and discussed operational expectation emergency succession. So that was OE1. All commissioners reported back in compliance with no recommended changes. Again, I believe we should see that on the consent agenda at the next board meeting. And finally, we reviewed and discussed the operational expectation. So OE5, that was asset protection. So this was approved in the consent agenda tonight. There were a couple of policy statements that were not fully compliant but are in process, and I believe we had sort of a discussion on kind of when those are finished. We'll kind of bring it back to the governance committee just more as a kind of a note, an official note, and then bring that back to the full board, I believe, for approval. That's the governance meeting. Any questions or things that I may have missed? Great. All right, we'll move on to planning committee update. I'll read this from Commissioner Dawson. So the following items were addressed during the consent agenda at the beginning of the meeting. So that's the concrete project bids, the rejection of the bids for the next replacement for Rose Creek, Courts Plus, Pepsi Soccer Complex siding project, purchase of new equipment, including a garbage truck and a supplement to the Ed Clap agreement with the city of Fargo to clarify responsibilities. We did have an extensive discussion regarding the aquatic fees, which we voted on this evening. The 4-for-1 seasonal pass was added. Season pass prices for nearly all individual pools, as well as the 5-for-1 were reduced. The goals were to take another look at the price of the passes with reduction if possible and see if there are more options, which allows families to choose the pass works best for them. And then we discussed the scholarship program as well for Fargo residents and how it was expanded to include adults, which that's a good extra note at this time that adults now can apply for scholarships for pool passes. That was the update from the planning committee. Any questions or concerns on the planning committee update? All right. Having concluded the regular agenda, the meeting is hereby adjourned.